Hi everyone and welcome to my attempt at a YouTube channel. I've been thinking about making this for a while and I got some time to do it while in quarantine, so I hope that I can keep going with it afterwards. I thought I would start by making like a more fun and less serious video, so it's not going to be about like the impending ecological crisis. It's more going to be ignoring the problem. But anyway, so today, because of that, I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite pieces of media, like books, movies, TV shows, and things like that that have environmental themes and ideas, just so you can like care about the climate crisis whilst being locked in your house, which is probably honestly the best thing you can do for the climate, aside from dying. Great. But yeah, I thought I would share some of my favorites in case you're looking for recommendations whilst on lockdown. I just wanted to mention that not all of these are strictly about environmental themes or like have a super environmental story, but all of them do have like a pretty strong undertone and are pretty related to it, so I feel like they shaped my beliefs and desires to like care about the environment and care about activism, so I've tried to include them for that reason. Yeah, I hope you enjoy them if you choose to give any of them a shot, and let's get into it. The first film I wanted to talk about is called Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. It's an early film from Studio Ghibli, the same studio that made Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle, which are some classics you might be familiar with. This film is based in an apocalyptic version of Earth that is hinted to be what remains after a nuclear war. The residual effects of the nuclear war have created mutant insects and huge uninhabitable patches of jungle. The film isn't the deepest or most philosophical film I'm going to mention on this list, but I think the way it explores anti-war themes and insect conservation in conjunction with general environmentalism makes for a really clever and interesting take on the topic. It's really enjoyable and encouraging to me as well to see how the story celebrates its heroine because of her compassion and connection to nature. So she ends up saving the day through these values instead of through violence. I think also this film has that really classical, magical, Studio Ghibli feeling, gentle comedy, and is generally a really visually and conceptually beautiful film, so I would really recommend it. Yeah, I know this is a bit of a stereotypical one in terms of eco-fiction, but I still really want to talk about Avatar because I think a lot of people watch it with a focus on the action or visuals on their first watch, and miss out on the chance to focus on the environmental themes in the story, which are super amazing and important. At the core of it, I think this film has a really powerful and relevant message about the perils of prioritizing short-term economic gain. I think this is really relevant to so many of the issues we're seeing nowadays. I also think the moral and spiritual journey of the protagonist is a really under-examined but beautiful aspect of this film. The dilemmas he faces, his relationship with the Na'vi community, it sets a really beautiful backdrop for exploring human connection to nature. So in general, I just think this is a really accessible film for exploring environmental issues and related topics. There's something new in it each time you watch it. And because of the quality action scenes and phenomenal animation, there's something in it for everyone.
What is the secret of Soylent Green?
This third film that I wanted to talk about is a little bit less of a well-known one. It's called Soylent Green and it was released in 1974. It really shocks me that it was released so long ago because the way it tackles some ecological crisis-related issues is completely ahead of its time. It's set in 2022 in an overcrowded, polluted version of Earth suffering from shortages in food, water and housing as a result of some unnamed ecological catastrophe. There are some aspects of the film, like the threat of overpopulation and honestly some of the acting, that are pretty unrealistic, but I think generally it does an amazing job of tackling some underexplored issues related to climate catastrophe. It touches on climate anxiety through talking about assisted suicide and voluntary euthanasia, and I think it also tackles the class aspect of who will actually be affected by an ecological catastrophe really nicely and really effectively. This is a really bleak picture of how the climate crisis could play out, but I still really recommend it. On the note of always recommending super depressing movies, I don't know about other people, but when I watch movies, I don't always just want something that's entertaining. I really like watching things that are interesting or make me think a lot, so that's why a lot of these probably not as easy to watch as Deadpool or something really fun like that. But yeah, I still really recommend them, and it's not like they're completely boring and intellectual, so I hope that you will still give them a chance. I just have a couple of books that I want to recommend as well if you're a bit of a reader like me. So the first book that I wanted to talk about is one that's it completely changed my worldview and how I thought about a lot of assumed stuff when I first read it. It's called The Dispossessed by Ursula guin. But yeah, it's actually a sci-fi, and it doesn't have anything strictly to do with the ecological crisis on Earth, because it's set on a made-up planet, and it's part of a series of books about different planets in a system. It really explores a lot of themes about how to structure society, so it's a lot of anti-capitalist and anarchistic explorations, but it's not really got an agenda, so it's just sort of exploring positives and negatives of multiple systems. But yeah, just through doing that, it completely changed how I look at a lot of assumed structures in our society. I think it really adds to the debate about in the balance of corporate and government and individual responsibility. So I think this novel's exploration of how that's divided and how social systems can affect that is really, really important and gives you a lot of food for thought. And plus it's a classic sci-fi with lots of cool technology and cool ideas. Another novel that I really enjoyed reading when I was first sort of thinking about these sorts of ideas is Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. It reminds me of Sophie's World, if anyone's read that, but it's got a more environmental overtone. Basically, the format of the book is it explores and critiques a lot of assumptions of modern society in narrative format, so it kind of specifically attacks key overarching assumptions about I guess mostly human superiority over the natural world. I think this is a really good novel to start with questioning your beliefs and the way you look at the world in general. It's really, really easy to read. It doesn't have any annoying, obnoxious language or the dispossessed, which literally makes up a bunch of words and is kind of hard to follow. It really roots a lot of environmental beliefs and claims in humility, and that's something I really believe in, even though I'm sort of bad at it. I think that a lot of environmentalism and activism and how we can integrate into nature in a sustainable way comes from developing the virtue of humility, and this book really illustrates that, so I really recommend it. I also wanted to talk a bit about this book, Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood. So this book is a bit more about biotechnology and the consequences of some of the biotechnology we've developed recently. So it kind of extrapolates on a lot of things like CRISPR and hybrids and stuff like that. But I think that the message it has about the attitude behind those actions is really relevant to a lot of just general ecological concerns lately. It sort of displays humanity having a complete disregard for the limits of nature, and they use it only for human interests, which results in a massive catastrophe and an apocalypse. So we could probably do well to listen to this book. But yeah, it just also attacks the kind of relentless need to move forward as a human society. Plus it has some really cool feminist explorations and critiques in there. Talks about risks to vulnerable sectors of society in a global crisis. So I think acknowledging that the climate crisis affects refugees, affects women, and affects those in vulnerable locations more than it will affect us in privileged countries is really important to like add into the discussion about the climate crisis. I think this book like distinguishes itself from a lot of the other examples that I've referenced in that way, so really recommend it if you like already know a lot about the climate crisis but want to like broaden your viewpoint. The final book I wanted to recommend is not technically fiction, so I lied a bit in my title, I'm sorry. It's called Practical Ethics by Peter Singer. I know it sounds really boring and nerdy, and honestly probably most of it is. Yeah, we covered Peter Singer in my ethics unit last year and I got really interested in reading this book. I think it's a really great introduction to ethics that isn't too complicated. Some parts are a little bit dense, but you can get through them pretty easily, and explores a whole bunch of different like classic ethical issues, including abortion, animal ethics. But obviously the chapter about the climate crisis is the most relevant. I just think it makes some really effective points and introduces some really interesting moral principles and suggestions. It draws on a lot of studies and empirical evidence as well, so it's a great one to start with if you want to get behind the ethics of the climate crisis in a little bit more specific detail. Finally, I just wanted to mention a couple of YouTube accounts and social media accounts that have taught me a lot in the last year or so about the climate crisis. And the first is an Instagram account called Waste Free PhD. She mostly focuses on zero waste, non-GMO, like non-toxic kind of subcultures on Instagram. And she spends a lot of time debunking bullshit like peddled by both sides of the debates in those areas. And because she has a PhD in her name and she has a PhD, she focuses a lot on science and objective evidence behind it. So I really recommend her. I really appreciate her commitment to neutrality and to making science accessible to a wide audience. So I strongly recommend you give her a follow, especially if you're interested yourself in trying to pursue a zero waste lifestyle. I also thought I'd mention PickUpLimes on YouTube, but they're my favorite YouTube channel for vegan recipes. They really emphasize well-rounded nutrition, which is great because I've watched so many YouTube channels that they just eat like raw fruit and vegetables all the time, and as someone who does a lot of sport, I would literally disintegrate if I did that. So I really appreciate their commitment to easy, cheap, nutritious recipes, and they're always easy to make in bulk as well, so for someone who is time poor like me, I super appreciate it. Finally, this is another probably really well known YouTube channel. I don't know how to say their name properly, I'm sorry. I think it's Kurzgesagt. But they make really cute animated videos explaining basic scientific concepts or complicated scientific concepts in a basic way. Obviously not all their videos are about like the climate crisis or ecology or anything like that, but I think they generally promote a really great commitment to accuracy and quality, and they have a great holistic awareness in all of their videos of like environmental science. So I think they're a great channel to check out, and their videos about environment in particular are really interesting. That's it for my recommendations. I hope that you can check some of these out whilst you're on lockdown. I'd really love if you left some feedback in the comment section, or you can DM me on Instagram if you want to just let me know what you'd like another video about, and I'll try and get another video up either next week or in 2 weeks. Yeah, please let me know if you checked any of these out or if you have any questions. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it wasn't too terrible and torturous to sit through. I hope I can see you in another one.